loud noise before it does the.
Here we go! It's time to do this once again! It's time to dim the lights and let the feedback build! 3 clicks and sticks! And we're ready to explode! We say
This content is for informational and educational purposes only. You should not construe any such information or other material as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. Nothing contained here constitutes a solicitation, recommendation, endorsement, or offer to buy or sell any securities or other financial instruments whatsoever by Draper Gorin Blockchain, aka DGB, the presenter, or other associated parties for the content being provided. Please do your own due diligence and seek proper counsel.
Boom.
Boom. Sorry, I was getting excited. I think these headphones, normally I turn the headphones down a little bit when we're talking because for whatever reason, and then today I hadn't turned it down.
Well,
and it made me extra pumped when the music was going.
Well, it's been extra pumped. I mean, we were talking about Tezos today, right? And I mean, Tezos pumped this last week. I think probably news because we were going to talk about it. And in anticipation of us talking, it's pumped. And I mean, it made it past $1.20, and now it's back at $1.05. And I'm only 50% down.
How dare you?
I didn't tell you to buy too high.
Oh, well, I know my average entry is like $2 on Tezos, but I mean, like, it's okay.
Yeah.
I want to make a joke about the NFT. I want to make a joke about the NFT community and buying too high. Get it? You know?
I mean, people do want to know, like, why. A lot of people are asking me that. I got so many yesterday, just like, why is Tezos pumping now? Like, what happened? What's the thing? I'd say the main thing is what I've been saying all along, which is.
So I realized that it made.
Like, am I muted?
Like I was saying, no. I made it seem like there was a problem, but I was adding to.
What flashed to my mind was like, okay.
Maybe I'm
muted, but wait a minute. If I were muted, he wouldn't say it like that. Anyway, but yeah. So the thing is, what I've been saying all along is that, like, we don't do the institutional, like, just the lot. I mean, the fact is, the coins that are top 10 or whatever, over half of them are, to put it lightly, there's heavy institutional market making going on there too, because, and right, I'm not criticizing, just right or wrong. I mean, there is an idea and there's some truth on both ends. To have relevance and to sustain relevance, and for that to endure, to be relevant, to be in that top place where it's people's radar. And in Tezos, we've always had this, and by that I mean, I think just people around, but also the practices you see in those with the money, like Tezos Foundation, is laissez-faire. And it's not just philosophical. It's good economic practice to say, well, really matter if you push the price up through whatever means or gimmicks or short-term things, because you're not going to have a sustainable base of people to support that price, and it's just going to collapse. And we've had people go even farther, like, who are just kind of frustrated at the price for a long time, saying, well, Tezos has a lot of Tez, they should just burn it all. And it's like, well, what's that going to do? It's not going to encourage more support. It's just going to temporarily inflate the price so that you can offer tags. And why would we do that? And also, Rankin, what you've been saying for some
might
time,
not be a bad solution, right?
Burn it all. Well, given the election, I think a lot of people have that mentality. But I'm not going to get political. David, you've been saying for some time, and it's true. I mean, Tezos Foundation has some of the most most Bitcoin of any organization in the world. They
burn it all.
And now it's like, I think given the amount that they have, it's like worth, given the price of Bitcoin, it's like $1.5 billion or something just worth in Bitcoin, something like that. It's over $1 billion, certainly well over $1 billion. And that alone was well over the market cap of Tez. And it's like, and again, some people were like, well, they should use that to buy the Tez. And then That's not going to do anything either. And also the best thing of that money is if that the whole money, point of that money. Let me get this out. The whole point of that money is to encourage the growth of the Tezos ecosystem. And that's really the greatest benefit, because that's the gift that keeps on giving, economically, practically, technically, in terms of community, in terms of broader ecosystem goals, and including for other related assets that like Bitcoin and everything else. I mean, everyone benefits from the encouragement of entrepreneurial growth. But yeah, and the other big announcement last week, I think I mentioned it last time, but Coin 50, that Coinbase index, that's like a Dow Jones or something of the top 50 crypto assets. Tezos is like something on that. I guess it's higher now.
But people, Tezos was a better buy proportionally to how much Bitcoin they have versus MicroStrategy's.
Yeah,
that talk, it just probably went viral, and all of a sudden people bought.
I guess they imagined that Bitcoin would have been the biggest winner of yesterday, which went up yesterday. I mean, it's not like it's doing bad or anything, but top 24-hour, like the biggest growth by far was Tezos. Something we hadn't seen for a long time. So,
no, it was exciting.
But if you ask those people in the Tezos community,
yeah. Well, I think Robinhood didn't Robinhood also add Tezos?
I thought no, it already did, and
did it already have it on there?
It didn't, and I was surprised because I tested it to see if it.
Well, because I think it recently got added on there. That might have been a recent ad.
You think it could have been something to do? You think it could have been something to do with the Coinbase 50 thing, like a little delayed situation where somebody somewhere started buying into that index?
I'd say the fact that it is the laissez-faire economics also means that this is very likely to, when it did bottom out to hit equilibrium to the point where it's like, look, there's nobody left to sell it. It's the opposite of what happens.
By the way, Kevin, we're Americans. You can say laissez-faire.
Yeah, no, so it's.
I'm probably gonna. We're all saying it wrong.
That's probably true.
Maybe the proper way is.
I learned how to say it from a NoFX song. So what do I know?
There are people who are much better at French than
my wife. I went on a trip with my kids this weekend, to some friends' houses, and my wife wasn't in the car, so I got to play Operation IV the whole ride there. 2 hours of Operation IV.
Yeah, I mean that's every song of theirs 4 times.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant like playing Operation, like the game.
No,
that would be cool too.
It's a legendary punk band that Alon knows as well as I know, and it's one of my favorites. And I had like kids that were okay with me putting that on and listening to it the whole way.
That's pretty cool.
Y'all can have another podcast just about punk.
What?
It should be a punk podcast. So I try. So have you ever meet somebody named Joan Westenberg? They're from
Sounds
Australia.
Rich.
They're from Australia. Content creators, really good email stuff, and they love some similar punk bands to me. And I joked that we need to start a podcast called Crypto Punks, but obviously not crypto punks like the Crypto Punks, but Crypto Punks like P.
Well, no. If somebody wants to sponsor this and send us some Crypto Punks, we'll be happy to utilize those for this IP.
And it just never happened. I got to reach back out.
It's because you bought the Bored Ape instead.
Well, no, I already had the ape. It was they had an ape too, I think, at some point, but they have a killer. Just a shout out to like a subscribable Substack, or not Substack, but one of those kind of email things where you can pay $100 a month and really, really good content and stuff. Or I don't know if it's $100 a year or something, not a month, but we were making inside jokes, stupid things about like Dag Nasty songs and stuff like that, and having some fun. And I wanted to start that podcast, Crypto Punks, and just confuse everyone. It would be punks talking about crypto, but not anything related to Crypto Punks, and purposely not mention the Crypto Punks NFTs like a single time the whole time, and just confuse everyone.
Oh, well, on Tezos governance, I will get to an analogy that does use a CryptoPunks history. I probably mentioned it on this show. a number of times.
Yeah, let's go back to Tezos, because I know I just keep making dumb jokes and I have to like sit back and not interrupt.
We need to. The hallmark, because the thing.
But really quickly, actually, what does Tezos have to do with Op Ivy? I thought this was an Op Ivy only episode. Sorry.
So you don't want to go back on punk rock because the whole show becomes punk rock. So back to Tezos. We'll bring it back to the subject.
Yes.
How's this Q thing?
The punk rock. We'll bring it all back to punk rock eventually. I promise. I mean it. So Tezos on-chain governance, that is the hallmark of Tezos. I mean, we can talk a lot about, and I think people assume that, the tech is better. And it's like, yeah, the tech is better, but that's not the cause of its greatness. It's the consequence of having great governance. And in the past, we've had this, in the present, in the future. What makes Tezos future-proof is its governance. And the thing is, to me, about in a pitch for Tezos, I don't even like to, even though for most people, it's like they want to talk about how great the tech is and how it's the best tech. I say, it's like, well, to me, it's still burying the lead. And also, if you're just looking at the best tech, you can also wonder, well, what's keeping you? Same reason why I wasn't able to get behind before Tezos. I wasn't able to get behind a single blockchain anyway, because it's like, what's keeping someone from forking this? Or what's keeping someone? This is all open source. What's keeping someone from just taking this their own thing? And what about the next day when another blockchain has tech that would top this? All this technology, it's open source. All this technology is cannibalizing each other. But to me, what really stood out about Tezos, and what has for all these people, and what surprises people about how it doesn't matter what happens in the markets, you have all these OGs in Tezos that are just so diehard and believe in this as a movement. It's because of the on-chain governance. So what is it? What does it actually mean? It sounds clunky. Well, governance traditionally in blockchain has followed the path of open source technology governance, where you see a repo on GitHub or something, you see this code, and then you like it, you want to make your own version, you fork, you get your own version, and then you modify it, and then you have your thing. And that's great for innovation. It's always been great for innovation, because you get technology you wouldn't necessarily get from the original creator or creators, and things spin off in those different ways, and it's great. The problem of having that for a blockchain, where you have to have all these validators agreeing with each other, what happens in a fork is, well, if you want to upgrade it, you want to move to the next step of what this blockchain protocol is, there's something that happens on-chain, which people off-chain decide. And even if they consult with the community and through a Discord or a forum or whatever, ultimately there has to be an entity that says, all right, or a person or a founding team that people say, like, yeah, this is what leads us unofficially. There's no official sense of governance, but it's like, Vitalik, we trust him, or this foundation, we trust that. And they say, okay, this is the upgrade. You can vote to say this if you like, but this is the where we're going. So upgrade your nodes to this, and then we're leaving that chain that you're on now and come to this chain, this forked chain. And originally that fork starts out as a minority, because it's just like one person who runs that node. But then eventually most validators, more or less, ideally, not necessarily most, but whatever, all right, this is the governance, like this speaks for the hull. And again, there's no official basis to say any of this, but they say, all right, this is more or less the governance of the blockchain. Whatever in that regard, whereas maybe both, or like there might be contentious ideas, like someone else says, no, go this way with this, and this will be the fork. And somebody else says, no, go this way, this is the fork. Or others say, no, we're not leaving at all. We're going to stay where we are, and that'll be the thing. And your fork will not succeed. Or all these things happen, and then what prevails ultimately changes over time. And we've seen this over the years. People know the notable examples, but I think most times this happen, or aspects of this happen, it goes unseen, but the consequences have been dire, and it slowed down innovation quite a lot. So, Ethereum Classic, Bitcoin Cash, the thing that we call Bitcoin Cash actually used to be something else. And in fact, when another fork came out, there was contention as to which should be the right one, and then it flipped, and then something else was called Bitcoin Cash, and now that thing that was called Bitcoin Cash, something else. So that stuff happens. Ethereum itself Cardano started as a massive hard fork of Ethereum because the two co-founders could not agree. Hoskinson and Vitalik could not agree. So, and then think of all the talent that went over. This is as one example to Cardano. Think of if that talent stayed as one united blockchain. Where would Ethereum be today? How much faster would it have come? Where would gas fees be right now? Like how reliable and interesting and so I mean there's a trade-off on many ends. You could also say that the fact that they didn't have to compromise enabled innovation to come out in different ways. It's like, yeah, but there's a trade-off on another end. So and I also compare it to, I think a lot of people can remember or still relate to Android and iOS. I remember, especially in those early years of smartphones, where it's like, well, yeah, with iOS, with iPhones, you have this united ecosystem. Everybody has these over-the-air updates, and everyone moves together. But when you have Android, you have, it's open source, and all these different distributions, but there's fragmentation, and that's a big problem, and it hurts the dApps. So, and still to this day, most are not the apps. Most of the apps that are released out apps, they start like a startup would start by making it for iOS, even if they don't like iOS and don't personally use it, because it's a unified ecosystem. You get that right, and then once you have more money, you do the Android, and then you get. So most of the time, they'll start on iOS and do that. So, and that's the benefit of unified ecosystem. But then, I've been talking now about, and this is just all to set the table. I've been talking about the fact that like this is off-chain governance, and that's what makes it so challenging. What Tezos has is on-chain governance, and it's a process so for one thing, it decides its own upgrades on-chain. There's an official upgrade on-chain based on the proposals that come from the validators themselves. So the bakers, who are the validators on Tezos, they inject protocol upgrades, even if it's made by a firm that releases it open source and not by the baker who injects it. It's the bakers that have to inject it. And they can take that stock proposal and and make variants, and people can inject that. Whatever proposal in the first phase gets the most amount of votes goes to a next phase, which is an exploration phase. And that's once it gets a super majority. And
how much Tez does a person need it to have in order to make a proposal?
I know to be a baker, you need to be a baker you need 8,000 Tez, and delegated. You only need a fraction of that for bonds to get going. It's very affordable still today. I mean, to become a baker. But yeah, so there are stages of governance where, and without getting, we'll get into the weeds a little bit later. But there's a proposal phase, where the proposal that has the most votes moves forward. There's an exploration phase after that where it gets ratified. Where not only do more or less a majority need to vote to just vote, but also 80% of that has to say yes. Otherwise, and we've had recently, we had a 77% outcome, and then what happens? The governance process restarts because we either move together as a supermajority or we don't move forward, and that's how you have a true consensus. And then after that, there's a testing phase, and then another governance phase, which is the promotion phase, and that's similar to that exploration phase. Same thing has to happen because after people tested it, we all agree. It's like, all right, everything is good, nothing crazy. Let's all agree and then go forward. And once that gets the supermajority, the last phase is an adoption phase. And that's when everyone gets ready for the upgrade. And these phases are roughly the same amount of time. And then after that, we have a full-on upgrade of the chain. So we've done this how many times? I can't even count. 16, 17 times. We're on letter Q now. So we've done the upgrades as letters. So the first upgrade was A, B, then B. So, and we named them after cities. So Athens, Babylon, Carthage, Delphi, Edo, Florence, Granada, Hangzhou, Ithaca, Jakarta, Kathmandu, Lima, Mumbai, Nairobi, Oxford, Paris, and now we're on Quebec. Now I know 17. My ABCs.
Now I know my Tez BCs. Oh. Yeah, we should test people if they know their Tez BCs, right?
And they get a prize?
Wait, what's the first four again?
Athens, Babylon, Carthage, Delphi.
Athens, Babylon, Carthage, Delphi. We got to make it a song,
Carthage.
Dude. Carthage.
Yes. So
all right. Well, somebody do that. That's not me, because that would be great.
It needs to be a
the other thing I want to say about the philosophical end of it.
I can. If it's gonna be a punk, I'll make the punk rock version. You go first, though.
Yes.
The other thing I want to say about the philosophical, it's not just that it prevents hard forks, because, and I also don't even necessarily like talking about that anymore, because it's so doom and gloom, and it's so like doomsday, prediction, like get saved, come to Tezos so you can avoid the inevitable hard fork. No, nobody likes to hear that. I am on stuff on a lot of chains. We don't like to think of that. So but really, so forget about that. It's not even about that. It's not about preventing this, even though that's one benefit. And certainly to financial institutions and their actuaries, that is a very critical matter. And there's evidence of that coming from JP Morgan after the Ethereum merge and the concerns about that, when many tried to stay on proof of work. Many instances of this. But the other thing is, when you have on-chain governance, when you have a republic, in effect, a commonwealth, where it invites the exploration of ideas from people all over the world coming together, proposing their ideas, discussing it, and having these that are ultimately iterations, because you need to build consensus, you invite ideas that really stem from the intellectual exigencies of everyone, and not by the few. Doesn't matter how smart a team or a founder is, it doesn't matter. They're ultimately going to be limited by the pace of their human individualism, right? You have to make sure that we have aggregate individualism, the unique qualities that everybody brings in. And in that way, the analogy I always use, or the example I always used is, and this is extreme, and I bring it up because it's extreme. I know it's not the same thing, but that's why it's effective as an example. The Rand Corporation did a study in about 2006, because this is in the middle of the war on terror and everything. We're in all these wars, and they were like, what causes terrorist groups to actually end? Not how do we suppress them or whatever, but what actually ends these things that they disband? Most people assume like, oh, military force, right, and all that stuff. No. The number one reason that causes those terrorist groups, these extreme factions that like to, break off and cause, insurrection or whatever, they get absorbed into the political process. Once they're given at the table, the violence goes away. And in fact, they moderate their positions because they want to build their own consensus and they want to build up support. Once you give them that equal platform to sink or swim on their own, because those extreme actions, they only happen when people feel frustrated, even if they shouldn't be. So what Tezos does with on-chain governance is it invites that, and it invites these ideas where before, like if you're a core developer of Ethereum and it's like, look, I can't get this thing through because the powers that be don't let me, and that's the way it is. I have to either fork this blockchain or start my own or something else, or have another of a million layer thing or do it that way. But no, I want to build onto core, on the layer one. Tezos is like, hey, come in, propose it, we'll listen, And let's say your idea loses. I've been in this position because twice, and you don't think like, oh, well, screw this, I'm going to fork now. No, it's like, well, look, if you really believe you're right.
Well, because you're having a choice, you have an option to participate. You have an option to actually prove if other community members are interested, versus I have to go build this totally separate thing and then see if people actually adopt it. It's just a much more productive actual participation.
Absolutely. And even if you lose, especially if you lose your vote, and if you truly believe that you were right and the consensus got it wrong, well, guess what? Time can prove you right. And then you can come in with so much more gravitas and credibility for the next time. You build on what you have. What you lose could actually be a benefit for you in the long run, rather than having a dead end at that point. And that's what keeps people in the process, because especially like just like in any kind of consensus, like in any kind of parliamentary setting and whatnot, any democracy, most people, you have one group that's going to dominate, or one coalition, and then you're going to have everybody else who's waiting in the wings trying to get their shot. And what are they all saying? It's like, well, it'll happen. We just have to keep building on the momentum, and they're local, things change. So, if you keep it up and you're serious about this, you will prevail. So I think that's an important thing. So for one thing, we prevent the contentious hard forks from happening, which is certainly an enormous benefit for financial institutions. So in the long run, that is huge. Particularly, and we could talk about this maybe another time, but with ETFs and all of that, that's a very important consideration. And it also brings in the innovation from everybody as opposed to few. And that's why we have the best technology, because we're able to bring all of this stuff in and build it more optimized on Tezos. And also, yes, there is a philosophical advantage here too, because of the outreach and the not seeking to please even a single institution or the, but rather the masses. So, you have all of these benefits, and that's Tezos on-chain governance.
I was talking to somebody yesterday, and we were discussing ETH, and I said, I was mentioning to him that my philosophy is I think that ETH was intentionally price restricted to, it was inflationary at first, right? And it was meant to be inflationary. And I think they intentionally put a burn on there to drive up the price of ETH intentionally, so that way you push traffic to the L2s to build out this L2 network, right? And it's because the thing is when you go to use ETH, which I was enjoying last year, because last year my gas fees were only $5. And now that we've gone back to activity on Ethereum, it's $20 per transaction, which makes it kind of a pain in the ass when you want to harvest liquidity pools or do whatever else you're doing. And so when you go and actually use these networks, you realize it actually makes more sense for the token to be cheap and for the chain to be affordable. And that, and the problem is there's this caveat there. There's this issue there, right? Is you want your token price up because you want to attract speculators, because the speculators want to make money, so that attracts people. But the thing is it really doesn't serve any benefit to the long-term use of the chain. And so it's better long-term to, and as I say, my best use case is I would rather have Bitcoin and use Bitcoin on top of Ethereum, or in this case, use Bitcoin on top of Tezos, where it's cheaper to use it, and then leverage the power of Bitcoin, as a reserve asset, or do something else where, Tezos be what I'm spending on a daily basis, or Ethereum in this case, which is more expensive, and then use other assets like dollars and Bitcoin as your reserves, of your store value. And it's about your real utility there, right? Like, and I brought up my car. I said, I don't hold tanks of gas in my backyard, and I don't want my gas on my car to be expensive, because I want to drive it. If it's $10 a gallon, I'm not going to drive my car. And that's what I get on Ethereum right now.
No, that's what, and this played out to perfection in early 2021. What we saw in late 2020, early 2021 was an explosion of commercial utility of Ethereum in the NFT world. OpenSea was the number one if you went to Etherscan, you see it was the number one contract every day. Everybody was using it for everything, and NFTs were exploding. Fine art exploded because people who were newly, ETH and Bitcoin rich were buying it up like crazy, and all these big artists discovering it. You had a lot of big publicity and Beeple and all that stuff. But what happened by February, March, is gas prices for ETH were so high. And again, like we talked about the explosion of it, but it was only like they peaked at like 12,000 users max in like December of 2020, and went down and down all the way to like May. So they were down to like 500 users on OpenSea, which was the number one marketplace on Ethereum. And so like it was prohibitively expensive for people. Art, like NFTs and artists, like there was a lot more fans of NFTs who wanted to break into this amongst artists and collectors, but they couldn't, because just the mere transaction of, forget about buying something, even minting it, even just readying your funds so you can even practice this was just prohibitively expensive, because it was hundreds of dollars sometimes. Well, I saw people even pay $1,500 for a single gas transaction.
Well, so OpenSea bypassed that eventually by going gasless mints, where you didn't actually mint anything until somebody actually paid for it.
Well,
right?
They had that. They tried that. But the thing is, you're just offsetting, you're just offloading the gas expense to the buyer. So, and to them, it's like you're the minimum price for any NFT would have to be like something in the hundreds of dollars. Yeah. So you weren't able to, and so if you weren't already a successful artist who got the gas was cheap, it was really hard to break in. And I would go to like the NFT tips room on Clubhouse, and it was like group therapy about gas fees. You had like three big artists talking, and everybody else was basically everybody else was just like just depressed and saying, I hope I can participate one day. Yeah, that's when I went up on stage and said, you know what? There's this thing called Tezos, and March 2021. That's when Ikitnunk came out. And it's like, look, it's basically free to mint. In fact, it was so cheap, people were just giving each other to do their first mint. And not only that, but you could buy a bunch of that. You could price it at like less than a Tez of something. I mean, because it was cheap enough. Like gas was cheap enough that you could price low NFTs. So that's what made
ETH NFTs worth so much, is that the barrier to entry to actually be able to buy them was higher.
Kind of for a well, you
couldn't afford to buy
on some level, yeah. I would say there is some truth to that. I do think that there was, because it does feed into perception of like, at least to some people, right? Yeah. It's like, well, if this is so expensive, it must be valuable and more valuable in the future, right? So but think about it. Most of the world, you have money to waste. For 99.9% of the world, they couldn't even afford a single gas transaction on Ethereum. No. So Tezos offered that solution. And keep in mind, there was no Solana smart contracts at the time. There was no Polygon.
Kevin, I know you were in Clubhouse. Doing things like this, promoting Ikitnunk and Tezos NFTs and stuff. But you're forgetting the most important driver of traffic to Tezos NFTs, which was the first music video NFT that was ever created by me. I know you think you did a lot of work driving traffic to Tezos,
first music video
NFT.
Do we have that to share? Do we have that to share on here?
Shit. We'll get that out. It was, and this was before.
Why did I say this out loud?
Let's see this music NFT. We gotta see this music NFT.
You know what's funny? Oh, here's the thing. You know what's funny is not funny, interesting. What's the thing? The thing that everyone says about. And we'll go back again. I just interrupt with a distraction from the real topic, but. If we're talking about decentralization, right, and we're talking about NFTs, there's everybody got mad at different groups who were minting NFTs where the images for those NFTs were hosted on Google or Amazon, which is where most things are hosted on the internet. And everyone says you need to be using IPFS to host your NFTs so that they could actually be immutable, so they could actually live forever on chain, so that you're not dependent on somebody paying their bill. Well, guess where that video exists now on the internet that was hosted on IPFS?
Where?
Nowhere. You know why? Because I had it in a free Pinata account. And I didn't pay my bill for Pinata for a certain period of time because I just forgot about it and didn't know. And because I didn't pay my bill, they didn't keep it online. And IPFS is not decentralized and doesn't have enough people online right now. And guess what? The same thing happened as if I would have had it in my Amazon account or in my Google account. That's auto pay, and I have so many things on it. I would have never stopped paying for that one. And so it actually was a disservice by putting it onto IPFS. I have it somewhere. I'll find it somewhere. And I know actually, it also exists on like Twitter and places like that.
But that kind of breaks the continuity.
I was going to say, the only song I have is the one about Mikey's guitar or bass.
Oh, no, Mike. Well, his name is Mike, but I say Mike. Because when we were teenagers, his name, that's a different Punk Ape Strong song. Hold on, I'll find Tezos. I'm just going to search Tezos song.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so now, IPFS at the time, it was decentralized-ish. I mean, the idea is with Filecoin, it's trying to get a truly.
I wonder when we see the great wave of IPFS NFTs just disappear.
Lots of them are probably already disappeared because people just don't pay that bill, right?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, there should be. I wonder if there could be something. I keep thinking, like, how could it be done? Like a forever stamp, but for data. I mean, somebody ultimately has to continuously pay the bill for you, but like that would be some kind of bond would have to be. It's hard.
Well, Alchemix has a thing where you can post funds in there, and they'll use your revenue from it to pay. I think pay your ENS.
Assuming you have revenue.
Yeah, or pay the interest.
Because you have to sue.
Well, no,
You guys remember a dude named Alchemist?
Forever stamp works because it's like, well, the government.
I found the song I wrote about Alchemist, but I can't find this song yet. Hold on.
Alchemist, yeah, and he was a trailblazer for Tezos NFT before you could nuke, long before you could nuke. The first time I ever synced my wallet to anything actually was for the. I didn't end up buying anything, but it was for the Alchemist comic marketplace. I remember once you guys asked for like, when it was DGH, you guys asked for like for him to make a comic book cover for the
he
firm.
did. So I traded. He kind of
trolled you.
Yeah,
because it was the ambiguously gay duo like uniforms. They were all you guys were all wearing the ambiguously gay duo uniforms, and I was
got
like,
no problem with that.
Nothing said that.
The ambiguously gay duo uniform is also
Robert Smigel
is also Superman's uniform, just in different colors. So
kind of
and if you try to insult me by calling me gay, fuck you. You know that's not an insult.
This
that's
shit,
nonsense.
Man. It's the only way.
So
I don't know but it's just I don't know if he was necessarily if that was the intent or if he was unaware of that.
We should have asked him at the time. Maybe we did. I don't remember, to be honest.
Alon, you need to be careful, man.
That's better. It's better to have that. I would love that, man. Are you kidding me?
Wait. I should be careful for what? Because I said it's not an insult to call me gay.
Now your kids are gonna be able to watch your show.
Yeah,
my kid. Man. No, it's the opposite. I was, if you understand, I was the one pushing back. I'm saying it's not an insult to be calling me gay, is what I said.
Yeah,
because that's neither here nor there. It's
Look,
I don't care.
I don't have any dead bodies buried in my backyard.
That's good.
I'm saying I don't have any bodies buried. I'm saying don't look under my porch because there are no bodies there.
What
are you talking about? Your porch in Los Angeles,
or
at your parents'
house? You only have to worry.
Be safe and double check both.
You only have to worry if you're building a betting protocol.
That beach house in Catalina that I definitely don't have bodies buried in.
And he did build a betting protocol, so don't worry about him.
Wait, who built a betting protocol?
Polymarket. Then Polymarket have like his whole shit taken because he built it.
I was on Polymarket. Like I opened the app yesterday and it opened with an animation that showed like Trump as like this, like a statue of Trump and like glorifying like a zoom in of that. Like they are very clearly expressing their preferences as an entity, whereas they're supposed to be a neutral. Like, that was very weird to me. Like everything else until then was like, I see this as a totally
that was where it started being weird.
Well, like what the hell was that? Like an animation. I mean, people who haven't seen it yet, go to your Polymarket app now. Look, I'm giving them a free plug, and you can see this weird animation that's like glorifying Trump. Like anyone, if they did that for Trump or Harris or anything, it's just a very strange kind of thing to see for a.
Well, they're also being under investigation now, so I think it's like.
Well, I think they anticipated that would happen. That's part of the game for them. Like YouTube knew they were going to get sued by every Hollywood studio by knowingly violating copyright laws, and they didn't. Google, which eventually bought them, didn't settle those lawsuits until over a decade later. But anyway. That's the price, but all those people made out very rich, and it was very well worth it for them. So I guess that's depends how you want to play that game. Who knows?
Hey, what was the time? What was the time of the Hicket Nuke launch? I'm trying to find the video on my
March 1st, 2021.
So I should be February, I think, Feb 2021. I'm trying to find videos of myself playing guitar, February 2021, in my Google Photos. So I could download it and
it was before, it was well before. It was in 2020 that you did that thing.
I feel like it was like a month or two before Hicket Nuke.
And you made a marketplace.
I did my first.
You did make a marketplace before Hicket Nuke because everybody who made a marketplace on Tezos, especially, it was using the Open Minter platform, which was created by TQ at the time.
Let me throw a but because I want to take my piece of history and give myself a little credit. Open Minter was on testnet, and you had to modify OpenMinter to get it onto mainnet, and that was the hardest part for me, a non-technical person. And when I minted on mainnet, there were only a few people who had worked for the core, for whoever Tezos was contracting or working with to launch that, that actually had minted. There was like a Pepe NFT and like maybe less than 10 other NFTs completely that were on mainnet
Colors
from open. Nope, that's I'm saying on the OpenMinter contract. TZ Colors came before. I minted some things onto mainnet and testnet using. No, it wasn't the OpenMinter contract at least. OpenMinter had like a contract.
Sure, I think they used the FA2 tokens to do it. Yeah, because it goes because you can still. Like it's coherent to the same. Anyway, but yeah, so yeah, right. So when there was an explosion of interest,
what year was
2020?
It? Okay, 2020.
So there was an explosion of growth in Tezos in that month, and in March, April, and May, and I mean like 100 times as much activity. And users coming in. I mean, it was just like unprecedented success. I have never been a part of a cultural movement like that ever. And it was like none of us in Tezos before that. And suddenly it was like everybody. And like suddenly it was just this massive, it was the thing that we always hoped would happen. We didn't know how long it would take, but it did. And it was just so fast. And it reaffirmed to us like, yeah, we were able to move this efficiently and get this great tech and all of that because we have this efficient thing called on-chain governance. And whereas I thought our amazing innovations that would leapfrog others would take longer because, well, doesn't it take longer for decentralized governance to achieve something than an autocrat would? We were actually able to, like, this was very low-hanging fruit. We were able to just get our stuff together and do well. But the thing is, when that happened, you had so many people coming to Tezos on a DApp level, on an art level, artists and collectors. And also, you know, like the lead here was gas fees, like, oh, it's cheap, or the environmental advantage, the proof of stake, because Ethereum wasn't proof of stake at that time. And the thing is, until then, before that, we in Tezos, we never talked about the environmental advantage. I don't remember it. I don't remember reading it. I remember seeing it, and I'd been there for years. But it was very important to artists. So we emphasized it at the time, because at the time, it was a unique thing that corresponded with the market that was coming in. So we did, I think the messaging did modify for that time. At this point, I personally feel, this is just me, I think we need to like stop talking about that, because proof of stake is proof of stake. You're not, once you start talking about the energy differences of proof of stake, different proof of stake protocols, you're really splitting hairs. And it shows you didn't really know why proof of work was so expensive to people, or is such an energy consumer. Like, it's a fundamentally different thing. Like, it's not like it's outside of the range of concern when you talk about proof of stake. It's not like less than, just that whole system that caused energy expenditure to increase exponentially, that's gone forever when you go to proof of stake. And it's like, then you get to the point where everyone would, people would misspeak when they tried to defend proof of work. They would say like, oh, well, everything takes energy. Your phone takes energy. No, you don't understand hash mining. That's not what that is. That's something else. Now, with proof of stake is like that. You can say that, definitely, but not proof of work, because proof of work is something else. That network that actually powers all this stuff has nothing to do with that energy expenditure. The energy expenditure was just to keep the mining decentralized. Anyway, tangent. Anyway, so the other thing that we buried in all that time, because we were talking so much about the gas consumption and the energy and you know, and the environmental, we didn't talk about the governance so much. And whenever I would try to talk about how great the governance was and all the advantages I laid out in the beginning of this episode, like to, you know, when I'd have like a room full of hundreds of people, like trying to explain Tezos to people in Clubhouse or whatever, it would just be like nobody wanted to care. It was just so philosophical and outside of what they're dealing with on a day-to-day that nobody wanted to deal with it. Plus, especially at the time, I think I would always leave like, well, you know, it prevents these contentious hard forks. And you know what's going to happen with contentious hard forks, right? All your NFTs are going to split, and then you don't know who the owner is, because, you know, and it's like, no one wants to hear that, because they probably own NFTs on those chains, or they've minted them, or they to. No one wants to hear that. They'd rather just dismiss everything you're saying and not deal with this. So the mind kind of goes down that. So then I think it's more important to talk about the benefits of it, not like the prevention of a negative by having this, but like what does it bring that's new and different? And that is the innovation that enables us to be future proof and to have us stay together and to invite ideas from all over. Some examples, by the way, I think one of the biggest early shifts was, the ZK channel, so zero knowledge proofs and all of that, saplings that was heralded by Zcash, which everybody loved for years before Tezos launched. We were able to bring that in. People who worked on that at Zcash came to advise on Tezos core, and then that was deployed. I think it was 2020 that came in for Tezos. 2021. Yeah, I think early 2021, and then and Tendermint, which was, I believe, early 2022. So it was a fundamentally different consensus mechanism that was from Nakamoto consensus. This is getting more technical, but like it was a very big advantage, and it's what enabled us to get to these shorter block times while maintaining our decentralization and all this stuff. That was brought over from people who were at Cosmos. We saw this thing called it was called Tendermint was what it was called over there at Cosmos, and so this thing on Tezos is called Tender Bake, inspired by that. And we've done this. We keep doing this. Like there are more advantages that we've brought in from other blockchain ecosystems, and those people actually from those ecosystems come in, and we have this melting pot of ideas on Tezos that you just don't chains. And we have this heritage of on-chain governance, including and especially the contentions we've had, which is actually a very strange thing to say. The idea of contentions being a good and healthy thing, you think like, oh, let's not talk about that. That's regrettable. That's unpleasant. It's like, no. It's a good thing because the resolutions and the fact that we stay together are wonderful. And the fact that we're able to, really exercise and discuss and resolve all of these disputes together, like as an ecosystem, that's a wonderful, great thing. So it's not a rubber stamp. Yes, there are core development firms, many of them, and they're funded by Tezos Foundation, and many of them have their own revenue streams coming from private venture as well. And generally, I see a mix of that. But also, like they work together, sure. But you do have to have the bakers agree to whatever stock proposal, I call it, that comes in. So it's not always a rubber stamp. For the first several, yes, they were. But by the time we hit Ithaca, so when we were on the upgrades, we had for the first time a proposal was rejected, and Ithaca was rejected at the exploration phase, and we had to restart governance. And so eventually, and that was because one of the biggest bakers said they wanted to see who was the deciding vote there, said they wanted to see more of a choice between two different variants. It was a very specific issue at the time, and I can get back to that once we get into the specific issue right now. And said, like, if that vote is held, if there's just an option there, then okay, fine. And if it's still the thing that I want doesn't pass, I'll vote yes for that thing on the exploration phase. And that's what happened, and they did. They were true to their word. Then fast forward years later, we had a year ago we had the Oxford proposals come out, and we had Oxford come out, and then that was rejected actually at the promotion phase. Because we have this thing that eventually came into the ecosystem in the Paris upgrade, which was the subsequent one. But in the Oxford, the system of adaptive issuance, which I've talked about before, and I'll get into that also because that's also related to YouTube and what's going on with that. People, like a lot of these big bakers, they just didn't understand what it would mean for them, and they thought like this could be bad for us, couldn't it? But it wasn't. It just wasn't understood. So even though it was very late in the stage, and already a supermajority voted yes for this, and already we went through a testing phase after that, and the promotion phase was just the last one, and you'd think like, oh well, if there was no bugs found or whatever in the testing phase, why would in the cooldown phase, why would there be a no on the promotion phase? But there was, and so we restarted governance. But in that time, it showed the community like, hey, we need to do a better job of getting everybody on board. We can't just like a rubber stamp here. Big bakers needed to know what this was about, and that improved our ecosystem because we became much better at internal communications within one another at that level. In fact, and this is a very cool thing, when it came, so the Oxford proposal, when it restarted, they said, okay, we'll move that adaptive issuance thing till later, because we don't want to have any contentions. By the time we came to Paris, and still, there was going to be a wait for like 6 months or whatever to start the adaptive issuance, because there was a belief by the core developers like, oh, it's just going to get rejected again. Let's wait for that. The community did such a good job explaining to all bakers how good this adaptive issuance thing is, that to the surprise of core developers, an alternative proposal was put out there that moved things up, that said, you know what, let's trigger this thing early instead of later. And that passed right out the gate. That even defeated the thing that let's do it later. So we actually had, we went from a point of where it was rejected to the point that core development thought it wasn't going to even pass the next time, to the point that it was so well accepted that it was moved up a schedule. So that was a really cool thing. And then that brings us to now to Q upgrade. And I'll take a beat here. I guess you're pretty happy, Alonso. I think you found your file.
No.
Oh, you're muted.
Talking to myself because I was playing songs on my phone before, but while you were talking, and I actually stopped looking at that a while ago. I was more thinking, about governance stuff, but then we can go to the song stuff. But why don't we finish governance, and I'll tease the end. There's two songs actually that I'm going to share, or we have to decide if one is going to be minted and dropped to everybody. We have to decide how we're going to drop it to who.
Twitter poll.
I'll always take a dip in. So I want to know, Kevin, when are you writing the history book on Tezos? Because you're probably one of the most authoritarian.
We're living it right now. You can't write a history book,
Well, I know, but
the history of Tezos so far.
But there's like hardly any books on Tezos on Amazon. There might be like one or something like that. It's probably some other language from what it looks like.
Sometimes ChatGPT will get it right. Like I'll test ChatGPT to see if it knows, and sometimes it'll just be hideously wrong, but it'll say with just as much confidence.
Like, so hey, you know what? Hey, I just Hypermarket. DGB has a platform called Hypermarket for digital books. You could be one of the first Tezos books on Hypermarket to launch. I'm just saying that might be.
I'd buy a hardcover.
It's a decentralized book publishing.
Well, it's not
just digital book publishing. They're working on it. It should be on there, but we should definitely. You should also just publish that book on Amazon.
Well, this is the book.
One of those publishers. Show. That's right. But we should have some AI listen to it, write it, and then you can edit it and adjust it and make it definitive, and then you can order like a hardcover.
Well, we're also talking about maybe doing a definitive club on Hypermarket for the DGB.
I think we will. So anybody who watches this will be able to go on there, watch these clips, of course, for free, whatever, and have chats in there, like with each other, so we can have a community in there, and then we'll have exclusive content just in there for folks who are there. But that's what you shared there. I got a question, and then we should go back into it. And I know we always go over. So we're gonna go to Q. I've got a question.
So this is something other than Star Trek.
Main event.
This is not Star Trek.
Not Star Trek. Okay. I see Q Saga. I'm thinking Star Trek.
Okay, I can share. Well, we can end the show today by playing the first NFT ever music video one, or we can play it anytime. We play it now. We can play it later. Whatever. But I also just discovered that I was playing with a piece of software or an app for my phone with my daughter. And we were doing like weird writing prompt things at the time. And one of the prompts was something about either like a short song or write a song that only has like 5 words or something. Or you know what? There was a song that my kids liked by Brian Oden called Tacos. And it was like, basically, it was like 3 seconds long. And he strummed the guitar and just went, tacos. And that was the whole song, which is kind of related to Tezos. But I made a song about Tezos that is only 13 seconds long. And it's in this app that was meant to be an app where you can like it looks like our screen, right? And I can record a part, and then Rankin can report his part, and then Kevin, you could report. So I actually recorded myself playing guitar in the middle, and then all 8 other squares in the grid are me singing one word to the song. And it's really funny.
I see what you're saying.
And it's a song that's only 8 words long. And then, but it's about Tezos. So I can play it today and debut it here.
So it's an interlaced harmony between multiple shots of yourself singing different words.
Wait, you know what? I'll show you the screenshot, but I won't play the song. This is what what it looks like. And it's old. You can tell from my background, but you can also tell.
That's what I was imagining.
So there, that.
I thought that was a minion in the middle, by the way.
Yeah, is my guitar with my cold purple looking hand. That's very weird looking. Actually, it looks like my hand looks like it's like rubber or something, right? Doesn't it?
If you blur your eyes, it looks like a minion in the middle. But
well,
there you are.
So I have it. Do I play it for us now, or do I drop
afterwards
it to all of the Punk Ape Strong
sample
backstage pass holders? It's 13 seconds long. There is no sample.
Oh yeah, no, it's 1.3 seconds. You got to play.
Play it.
Play the whole song. We're gonna play the whole song. Debut of the song.
Yeah.
You guys name it, and then we'll decide who we drop it to. Here we go. You guys ready? You got to pay attention because it's over before it starts. It's creepy too, just by the way.
This song is only 8 words long.
I told you it's creepy, right? So basically each thing I say, this song is only 8 words long. So this song is only 8 words long. That's 7. And then the last word is Tezos. And then all of the people whisper Tezos once. And so then it just gets creepy.
You can claim it. You have to claim it if you have a backstage pass.
Oh. So we're doing claims, so I don't have to spend like $100 on dropping it to everyone?
Yeah.
Oh,
I say don't, because if you airdrop it all.
Can I just let anyone claim it? Because I feel like if I'm going to do claim, then just how do I do it so I can just let anyone
some level of scarcity value. If there's no scarcity of any kind,
I could give it to people who only have the super awesome mystery prize box.
Well, they're only going to find it if they watch our show to the very end.
Well, those people can claim it.
There's only 200 people, 206 people watching live right now, but then a lot of people do watch it later. But how many people really stick to the last 5 minutes of this thing? You know what I mean?
I don't know. You don't have a link set up, right? So now what we do is we set it up for next week, and then we tell them at the end of the next show that they can go claim it. So now they have to come back.
It's such an insult to the people who are still listening. It's like, who are these people staying the last 5 minutes? What's wrong with you? No, these are the wise people, the one who want to hear about Q and what's going on with that.
Yeah, that's true.
And by the way, if you want to see,
how do they learn more about DGB? How do they learn more about DGB?
So hold on. There is 9,800 or so backstage pass, but only 200 of these. Super awesome. Which, by the way, I need to buy some of these because I like to go on the secondary and buy them when they're really cheap and then give them to new people because some people try to sell them for like 2 Tez. But this, and there's all sort in this mystery prize. There's also like all sorts of hidden things. What
are there?
What's the H?
How do I open the box?
HC?
I have a virtual box.
Bored Ape Hardcore. That's on Punk Ape Strong's guitar. So that's Punk Ape Strong's logo, BAHC. Right, but because if you notice on his guitar, there's always a BAHC.
Only 0.1 Tez.
See, what was that?
Only 0.1 Tez.
That's because you got to make it more scarce.
Oh no, the box. No, somebody's selling them for 3, but you should definitely. I would buy that.
0.1 on
maybe on the whole collection. There's people selling the.
Why not make it a prize for people who put into Tezfin, so we can look up those addresses or something.
If that violates any securities laws, I have nothing to do with it, but I'm doing it anyway. So so can you give me a list of all the people who've participated on Tezfin?
Yes, on the Block Explorer.
Okay, so you make me that list, and that's who will get the special
Tezos. This is the nice list.
And you know what? The nice list. And if you're on the nice list, I'll also send you in case you don't already have one, because this backstage pass was sent to people, all sorts of people in the Tezos community, like thousands. But I still have I think I have. You know what's really funny?
I have that one.
I love every time I drop stuff, people burn the NFT because like people are annoyed by having it. But if I go to owners,
Claim it.
Punk Ape Strong still has almost 2,000 of them. So
And if you if you don't know, you can go to Kukai, KUKAI.app, and create a wallet using your
yeah, that's a good. Hey, Kevin, I sent this to you, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Kevin has this. This is the only one of one, by the way.
What? I don't have that.
Only Kevin has it.
One of one. I just told you.
So man. I was drawing with my daughter. That night, and I drew this picture, and it was a one of one for Kevin, and I put my little NFTs thing, NFTs rule, one of one. Sorry, dude. And I put my initials there. And the NFT is called Sorry, Kevin, because I missed a phone call. I owe you at least like 50 more of these, by the way, because between then and now, I've probably missed 20 other calls we're planning on having together.
But because there's no comma after the sorry, you're saying that this is a very sorry Kevin. Like that's me.
Hey.
And you're screaming.
However you interpret it. So I remember I said this to my daughter. I said this to my daughter the other day, and I'll say this to everyone. One time I heard an artist, like a songwriter, be asked by somebody to explain their song and this and that, and he said, because the person interviewing them said there's lots of different ways to interpret it. Some people interpret it this way, some people interpret it that way, and he basically said, well, I think that a good piece of art does that, right? It makes different people have different feelings at different times in their life. And that's why I'm not going to explain this to you. And he's like, next question. So, interpret it however you want.
And let me say this about the Tezos
this is a very serious piece of art that you can interpret however you want.
What makes because it was able, like that fine art era of NFTs, like that's when Tezos came into its own. And I said I'd tie it
there's no comma here also, so maybe it's saying that this is a sorry.
I'm a sorry dude.
Also. Yeah,
I'm a sorry dude.
This is a sorry Kevin. He's a sorry dude.
He's a sorry dude.
Or add punctuation. Punk Ape Strong has a really wide range because he went from not having any punctuation to making sure that Enye in mañana is here. It's very the little dingleberry on top of the N for mañana.
Oh, that's what dude means.
No, I said see you mañana.
So let it do duty. So the community of artists that came on to Ikitnuk, especially that first few months,
driven by my song.
Yeah, and if you look at teia.art, TEIA.art, you can see what it looked like because that's the spiritual successor of Ikitnuk. They would always comment that Tezos, and when they said Tezos, they really meant Ikitnuk because that's what they were referring to, has a very punk rock vibe. And I think that was informed a lot by the economics because it could bring in so much participation, and it was sort of a rebellious nature against the establishment of the people who had the money and the haves and the have-nots, who you can't mint on Ethereum unless you had the money at the time. And just the stripped down aesthetic of Ikitnuk. I heard this so much, and at first I didn't know how to interpret it. I thought it was maybe an insult or something, but I get no, that's what art is all about. It's countercultural, punk rock. That's what they kept saying, the punk rock vibe, the punk rock vibe. So anyway, see, I told you I'd tie it back to punk rock eventually. So, okay. So there's that.
Reagan has to drop. Reagan has to drop for another meeting. But I'll stay on. Let me just double check. Okay, I still have till 11:30. I got 20 minutes.
I will see you on later.
That's the nature.
Continue DJing on NFTs and talking.
Yes.
Later, guys.
Later.
So Q. So now we're at letter Q upgrade, and
I was trying to decide what to do.
Right.
Should we do this?
So,
should we do this?
I like the that's the best one. Yeah. So Q upgrade. So it started at, well, let me explain. I have to explain adaptive issuance first briefly, and I think I've gotten good at being brief at this. So in the past, the way Tezos delegation, or the way you would what people thought of as staking on Tezos wasn't actually staking. And at the same time, if people have been in the past, they might remember like, oh, it's liquid delegation. You just set your wallet to a baker and then you collect these rewards every few days. And that's it. You don't have your Tez locked up. It's great. And that was great, but there's nothing at stake, really. I mean, there's no consequence for delegating. So the whole proof of having a component in which a user can do an action in proof of stake is that there's something at stake, that you're doing this as opposed to not doing it, and like doing something else that would be less risky for you, but you wouldn't get the reward of it. You wouldn't get the reward because you're not putting something at stake. So that was an issue. And even though we had a very high delegation rate, which many of us mistakenly would refer to as a staking ratio, it was so what? I mean, there's no real consequence to any of this. But so what we wanted, and also it was all liquid. It was all this liquid supply in the market. So what we wanted to have was, for one thing, something in which we had actual staking on Tezos, in which what staking actually means, which is you lock up your Tez, and you can unlock it, not instantly, but you can unlock it. And for that, you get the due rewards for doing so, and to share in the benefit and the burden of a baker, so that if the baker that you stake with, and double bakes to something that is not good for the network or whatever, and lose Tez because of it, so should you. Delegation didn't have that consequence. So there was that. And so in June 2024, so we come recently, and this is when Paris was adopted. And originally we wanted to get this done many moons ago, many months before that. We wanted to get it done in Oxford upgrade, but it ended up happening in Paris for those reasons I explained. And we put in this mechanism, this new role called staker. So it's not just delegating and baking, it's also this role called staking. So you do lock up your Tez with staking, and you get twice the rewards you get with delegating. And so, and the idea, and that's part of it, that's part of this thing. Now, the adaptive issuance thing, which some people keep hearing about, what that leads to is, once we hit this target of a staking ratio that's about 50%, and right now it's at like 20% almost, once we get 50%, this thing called adaptive issuance gets triggered, where we're trying to keep at a target of 50%. If the staking ratio goes above 50%, that means like over 50% of the Tez is locked up, then that means the rate would come down dramatically. Could go down to ultimately the low of 0.025%. So well under a percent. Now, I kind of remember from years past that the return rate was like 6-7% on Tez, 5-6-7%. Like that's what they were getting for the rewards. The idea here is that it would bring the return rate down a lot delegating would be down a lot to 0.025%, that is. So the opportunity cost of not delegating would be very, very low. So you're more willing to spend, you're more willing to, do things in DeFi, all that kind of stuff. Whereas before, and still now, I mean, if you have Tez that's generating such a high return just by keeping it liquid in your wallet, you're not really inclined to spend so much or do all this stuff with Tez, because, why would you? I mean, isn't the whole point to, don't you make more money just by holding it in your wallet? That consequence makes you think twice about buying an NFT, So the idea of this is to reduce the opportunity cost of not delegating. And if it goes below that 50% mark, well, then the rate shoots up, it overreacts. And it can go to an upper bound of 7.5%, in which there's an incentive for people to say, "Hey, wait, I got to get more money into staking because the opportunity just opened up. I want to get." And then so there is this incentive, this inherent incentive to fill that gap. So that takes away. So that does a few things. It gets a lot more liquid Tez, like not in a liquid form. It reduces the opportunity cost of not staking. It enables and grows a competitive of not delegating. It grows a competitive market for people to continually stake and grow staking and looking for these sort of arbitrage opportunities for when they notice a growth jump in the value of the return on staking. So it does all these things, and we're at the beginning of this. I mean, there could be more iterations to come. Now, to get to that 50% target, here's where we get to the proposal. To get to that 50%, the initial outlay for for adaptive issuance to get us to that point was to have this large incentive, this very high return rate for people who stake before we hit that target. So now we're at like a 20% rate, and you can look up what the return rate is right now. It's very high. And if you haven't staked yet, it's a very good time. I mean, this is the gold rush. It really is. You get 15.8% return on your Tez right now for staking. So crazy high. So nearly 60% for staking, for locking up that Tez. And if you're delegating, just delegating, which again, until June 2024, so until very recently, this is all you could have done. And if you haven't been in Tezos for a while, let me tell you, I know probably the thing that you your wallet or the block explorer or whatever site you were using to do your delegation, it might have said staking, and it might still be calling it staking, but that's not staking. Okay. Now, if you go to Tezos wallets, they'll say staking. Coinbase, that's not staking. It's not even custodial staking. It's custodial delegation. It's the furthest thing from staking what they're doing. Okay, so so if you want a surefire way to find out if you're staking, just go to stake.tezos.com. Kukai wallet, Temple wallet, they to this. I think Ledger is still, and those you can connect your Ledger to any of those things. So they're all compatible with. All right, so to get that in, so the 15.8% right now, and that goes down as more people start to stake, and we get closer to the 50% target. But so there are many who are just like, okay, yeah, but it really hasn't. Like, I think a lot of people thought we'd get to that 50% a lot faster, maybe, or whatever. They think like, or they're just thinking about the long-term supply of Tez, and they're like, this is just too much. This is too good for the people who have already staked. They're getting such supply of Tez. It's too much. We got to bring down this rate. So what the addition, so in Q, the core developers who believe this, they put in a maximum bound curve for this early stage, which would really bring down that issuance rate dramatically. I don't know to what, but very, very much bringing it down. And there was pushback by those that have been staking largely. I mean, these bakers and everything. They're like, well, look, this is, for one thing, it's our lifeblood. I know it's more inflation, but it's rewards to us, and it's rewards to the people who stake and delegate to us. So it matters for us. And, as long as the price of Tez was stable enough, and certainly it went up 50% yesterday, then the inflation rate isn't really killing us, is it? So let's keep it going. And maybe this incentive does matter in the long run. Maybe it is marketing that we have to fix. Don't mess with that incentive. It's good. It's taking a while, but it's a good thing. Let's let it keep happening. Well, so there was a lot of contention on this, and there was a lot of discussion. Initially, the core development firm together that put out the stock proposal, they just wanted to put in this maximum bound curve that would dramatically bring down that early incentive rate. And but then they said, okay, well, it seems there's a lot of pushback. So then they put in another one. And so there were two versions of Quebec that initially came out. There was Quebec A and Quebec B, and Quebec B was like more, it was kind of like meeting them halfway. It's like, it's still ultimately maximum curve. It's like maximum curve light. But for a lot of these bakers, like, hey, that's not good enough. We don't want this at all. Don't you get it? We don't want it at all. And I, remember, in the tezosagora.org, tezosagora.org, tezosagora.org. That is the site where you can track governance and have where the main discussions happen about governance. There was discussion about it, and people still disappointed by the idea that there would only be that, like, they didn't really get the option they wanted. So there were a couple of people who got together, and then they took that stock proposal and they modified it to take out that maximum curve altogether, to give them the variant that they wanted, a third option, right? Now, these types of community modifications, they've been done before. I did it twice. They were the closest votes in Tezos history. Looking back, I don't even think necessarily, I kind of regret it because I think they had a point. But it was a good experience nonetheless. But again, nothing had ever won. Nothing had ever beaten the stock proposal.
You don't have to regret it. You don't have to regret having an idea.
It is. I just don't want to. Well, I'll tell you why. There's a reason why I have to outline that. So we'll get to that because this is a saga here. There's a 3-part saga.
Yeah.
So
we're gonna have to have more time.
Yeah. Well, no, we're staying. We got to get this. We got to get through this. People got to know. It is
okay. So we got 10 minutes.
Even if I'm here alone, man, I got to do this. So
actually.
So anyway, let me get through this.
Okay.
So that came out, and that was called Kina, Quena, which is a different city.
Yeah.
It's not Quebec, but also starts with Q. And that actually
because it's in the same period.
Yeah. So with the theme, So Quena actually won the first core community amended protocol proposal to actually defeat the stock proposal. So anyone who thought that this was a rubber stamp, and the fact that we've denied proposals in the past, like with Ithaca and Oxford, and that wasn't enough to say, well, yeah, sure, but the community proposal never won. It did. And so that was history. And that happened back in September. And so that was a very big deal. It went on to the next phase, which is exploration. Now, as I mentioned, exploration has to get around 50%, a little over 50%. It changes depending on turnouts from previous cycles, but it needs to get that much of a vote. So it has to be a lot of people active on this. Like at least half the network has to be active. Essentially, could be a little bit under, but that's a different topic. But then of that, 80% have to say yes, and that doesn't include like the people who vote pass. That's pass. Of the yes and no votes, 80% need to say yes. And we had one big baker, P.S. Dog, who's been influential in these kinds of things in the past and has been instrumental in actually defeating proposals like Ithaca in the past. He voted no. And he voted no. And it's only 4 bakers that voted no, but he is the largest community baker, or had been at that point virtually the largest community baker. So 50 million Tez under his delegation and all of that. So that meant that it was a very big uphill battle to try to get bakers to vote yes to defeat that, because for every vote that his thing counted, you had to get 4 times as many to say yes. So it got up to 77%. Didn't quite get that 80%. So governance had to restart. And then we went to Quena. So then we went to a second round of this. And and what happened is the core developers said, you know what, this is an opportunity to maybe punch up instead of just having a total redo, punch up Quebec, and they made it a little bit better, cleaned up some areas, and then so that went out. Now, what I expected, and I've even said this on I think the show before, without even I expected the next Quena to just be a repeat of the previous Quena, or just modifying that updated Quebec, but no. They actually did something else. And I didn't even realize this till Kryptonio pointed it out to me, that they actually lowered the target from 50% to 42%. And I was like, wait, what? We didn't talk about that. Nobody talked about that. I don't care who you think you talked about that with, because I didn't hear about it. And certainly these big bakers that we had been encouraging for a long time, one where they didn't know about it. And a lot of big bakers were voting yes, because they thought it was like the original Quena. So that upset me. It's like, wait a minute, now this was a good thing, but now they're getting to areas of stuff we didn't talk about. But fortunately, or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, that adjustment they made by lowering the target to 42%, that had a bug because it was untested. And the problematic nature of it, even though it did win the proposal vote again, so it got to the exploration phase, it was defeated in exploration phase, and this time for good reason. For like an agreeable universal reason, which is that this bug. Of course, I thought it was problematic because of the fact that they did something with without talking. Like it's a pretty big change to bring it in. 50% is so it's a very kind of psychologically satisfying number. And they said no, 42% is good because it's Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and how 42 is the center of the universe and whatever. So I'm like, nobody cares about that. So anyway,
42 is not the center of the universe. It is.
I know.
To life, the universe, and everything. Don't disrespect.
You put out Quena 42, didn't you?
I did not.
So then we went back to Quena 3, and I thought to like the third version. This is the third part of the saga, which we're in right now. And I thought, and I talked with the developer of this, and I said, like, look, and they said, look, we're going to go back to the 50% with the Quena 3. I thought, oh, okay, good. Okay. Let's so everything, and then I thought that would win and go forward and whatever. But the new Quena that came in, the third Quena version, it went back to the 50% target, but then they added other stuff that had nothing to do with any of this, which was changing something with or want to shut down liquidity baking, which was a point of contention back in the Ithaca vote, and people like it's a very polarizing issue, and when I think more or less the community has come to really accept it and appreciate the value of it, but there are people who are still saying, no, it's not too. So it's like, wait a minute. No, like you're doing, first of all, even if you agreed with this idea of doing it, don't you realize that these kinds of just random modifications are screwing up the code and will probably be in a Kina 2 situation where there's a bug? Like, why would you want to be so invasive to this? That was an issue. I mean, my issue is that this was not even discussed, and I would have just opposed because I think liquidity baking is a great thing. It's just not really understood well. I responded to this by asking and putting on my Twitter a poll saying, do people want to have a town hall on liquidity baking? Most said yes. So I want to host that at some point pretty soon. But anyway, so that's where we are today. But we still have history that was made out of this, and hats off to the people who really pushed for this, to V, to Primate, to Baking Benjamins, and all of that. It's been a great ride. But yeah, it looks like Kina will be defeated. And this is the first time I didn't, even though it seems like I was probably like for the early Kinas, I didn't quite endorse it. I don't think I did. I tried to just kind of be neutral in it, but probably I liked the idea. But
never neutral.
Yeah, but when it came to this, I found it just very egregious, and I publicly put out a tweet saying I throw my support behind Quebec now, because this has gotten crazy out of hand. That's my opinion. So by my opinion, doesn't matter. Nobody cares. So it looks like if you go to Tezos Agora right now, maybe we can share the screen for it.
Do you want to do that, or do you want me to?
Allow.
Yeah, just if you're already on it, do the screen share thing, and if it asks me, I'll click.
Present.
Oh, here we go.
Here, you see it?
Boom.
Okay, so, and by the way, when you go to tezosagora.org,
I'm going to mute and turn off my screen for 2 seconds, and then I'm going to tell the person that I'm going to the next meeting that I might be a couple minutes late, but we still only have about 5 minutes. But just
Sure. So first of all, if you go to tezosagora.org, you'll see this. If you want to see the thing I'm talking about, you go here to proposal. If you want to go to discuss with the ecosystem different ideas, you go to discuss right here. Anyway, so we'll go to proposal. Well, it'll say whatever the stage is. Right now we're in the proposal phase, so that's the current period. But you click on whatever the blue button is, right? And you'll see there's 5 days remaining. It starts with like a 2-week thing. You can see the dates up on the top. And if you go to this tab, you can look at all the previous periods in Tezos history, all the previous periods. So all the way to the beginning, all the way since Athens, right? Let's go to the very beginning just to show nothing was proposed then. So again, if nothing is proposed in a proposal period, the proposal period just restarts. Actually, let's go here. What did we actually? Okay. I want to go to the very first proposal. Yeah, here we are. Yeah, so the first time we had like an Athens A and an Athens B, Athens A1. This was the first proposal period to ever have. After that, there's an exploration phase in which that won by, they got the quorum and it got the supermajority. See, the quorum then was 80%. They got the supermajority of 80%. And then came the cool down period. And then came that promotion. And then it won again, got the quorum, and it got past the 80% supermajority. And then comes the adoption phase, which isn't even here, but because it's just like 2 weeks that enable bakers to get ready for the upgrade, right? So let's fast forward to today with Quebec, a few years later, 5 years later. Yeah, and then so it looks like Quebec winning 21% participation here. So there's that original Kina that's there, but that's an earlier version. It's based off an earlier version of even Quebec, as I understand it. I could be wrong about that, but then there's certainly that's the lowest vote here. Kina has a substantial share, but Quebec looks like it's winning. I think Quebec is gonna take this thing, but who the hell knows? 5 days remaining. Yeah, so that's where we're at, and I think if Quebec wins, we'll probably finish this thing up. But who knows? If there are like significant holdouts for it, then we'll see what happens. Yeah. So that's what's happening. That's what's happening. And this is a fun thing. Come to go to Tezos Score and track this stuff, you know?
I think all this stuff is so rad. Just the fact that these proposals are all on chain, they're all transparent, they're all there, right? Like that just doesn't exist anywhere else, and there really isn't any decentralized governance anywhere else in this way. The way they do it in other ways is not, you know, in my opinion, the best and most. It is.
And by the way, those who would say domino or something else, like, oh,
it is, but it isn't. It isn't. It isn't. What's the right word? It isn't. I want to use the word like organized, but that's not the word I actually want to use. Like it's not done in the best. Like the fact that a bunch of basically 10 people can hard fork and the community, you know, decides the right one is a form of decentralization, but there is no organization. There is no,
and people say, they're like, well, and you know what? It can change over time.
And that leaves it too open to, in my opinion, you know, to hanky panky, to problems, to corruption, because you can say, if you have the biggest megaphone, you can say that more people are behind it, even if they're not. And that can drive people to go, oh, well, I guess we got to go to that one, versus here where you can actually see where each group is voting. And there is more, there's just more transparency to it. Because I could go and call up a buddy and be like, hey, Kevin told me he's behind this thing. And you might not be behind this thing, right? Or you might be behind this thing only with caveats, right? And that's the issue with all of this stuff. Hey, we're over time. I don't know if I sign off if you can keep talking or not. I could close it and let you keep going.
Let me say this thing. Here's an example of this has happened after the merge, and this memo came out because there were a lot of holdouts on the proof of work chain. And people say like, oh, well, if there's which fork to go with, Tether and USDC will decide. First of all, they don't want to do that because that makes them, in a lot of compliance issues. But also, aren't we just back to the beginning of before blockchain when financial institutions decide everything for it? Isn't that the whole point of this? So those things won't last, and it would just degrade the chain because it's obvious centralization. The only way to be sure and have decentralized governance is if you have on-chain governance. USD Tez, we don't decide things. We listen to the bakers.
Speaking of financial institutions co-opting our industry and making decisions behalf on the whole thing, and this is an epic troll just for anyone who doesn't get my sarcasm. While we were streaming, we have hit a new all-time high with Bitcoin. Where we hit 94K and a little more. So that's cool. And what this is reminding me of is when we do our streams, Bitcoin just hits all-time highs. So a part of me thinks we should be streaming more often or something, or not ever disconnect. But I've got to go to the next call. Do you want me to play the
All right. Well, that's a very relevant way to
time?
End the stream, to talk about the next call and how you got to go.
But here's the thing. I'm going to close it. And you can keep going if it lets you. It might just disconnect you because I'm the only admin.
Can't we just have a grand ending that's just that that ties it off? Because I'm done.
You're done. So I'll play the video and then we'll sneak it off. And then what we will do next time. By the way, in the video I think I mentioned DGH if I remember correctly. And what I just need to remind everyone is go to dgb.vc if you want to pitch us, if you're an investor who wants to hang with us and find out about our companies who happen to be fundraising, if they happen to be fundraising. I'm not saying any of them are actually fundraising right now, but if anybody is, we'd love to connect with you. Also, if you're an early stage entrepreneur, I want to talk to you. I want to hang out with you. And we got to hang soon. We will end the stream, but we're going to have Kevin back, obviously, to keep talking about Tezos. He's on almost every week with us as a wingman anyway, because this is meant to be a family hang. So when a member of the family messages us saying they're online, they join us. So join the family by going to dgb.vc. And all those things that Kevin said about Hicketnunk and that whole community being created on Tezos, this whole art community, I just want to remind everyone that it was this video that did it, not any of the things that Kevin said.
Yes.
This morning I figured out how to connect Open Minter to mainnet and wondered if anyone had minted Tezos music videos yet. So I called up Snoop and Axl Rose and got McCartney on the phone. They were stoked, but also busy, so you're stuck with me. Wouldn't it be cool if Johnny Cash were still alive, or maybe Queen could mint some NFTs with me? Bob Dylan said to call him back next week. I'll try the Stones again, but they never, ever return my calls. So Tezos folks, I'm sorry for stealing the first slot, but DGH is all about being first. So here's to the first Tezos music video NFT.
Goodbye.